What's going on, everybody? So Doctor Strange marks the 14th Marvel Cinematic Universe film. So what better time to give my ranking of all 14 of these crazy comic book movies that we've gotten since 2008. Also, I'm going to be doing a little bit of a collaboration with a fellow YouTuber who I have a lot of interaction with, Sean Chandler. I'm going to put the link for his video down below in the description box, so go ahead and click his video and check out his ranking as well. We haven't discussed our rankings, so we have no idea what each other's lists are going to look like, but after you get done, go over to his channel, check out his stuff, especially his video, give him a like and a subscribe, and tell him that I sent you over there. So starting off at number 14, Iron Man 2. Iron Man 2 was basically a giant commercial for the Avengers. Now, before I even get into this, there is not a single movie on this list that I would consider to be a bad movie. At the most, like Iron Man 2 and probably the next two movies I'm going to talk about, I'd give it a Netflix watch. But there is not a movie that Marvel has put out that I would say is a bad movie or a garbage movie, so keep that in mind. But Iron Man 2, though it is enjoyable because it keeps what was so great about the first movie, and that's Robert Downey Jr.'s performance as Tony Stark. And I like the villain of Whiplash for the first third of the movie, but you know, the addition of Justin Hammer by an actor who I love, Sam Rockwell, they don't really do anything with him. He's just kind of like a secondary throwaway villain, which is kind of a theme that has ran throughout all these MCU movies. And this movie, like I said, was just a giant commercial for the Avengers. They were less focused on making a great Iron Man movie and more focused on getting everything set up for the Avengers. This was like the BVS of the Marvel Cinematic Universe. That's why when I saw BVS, I said, this is the Iron Man 2 of the DC Universe, because this is more focused on setting up things to come than telling a coherent story. So Iron Man 2, to me, is the worst MCU movie. That's number 14. Number 13, Thor: The Dark World. Again, a movie that I enjoy, but the problems with that I'll get into more with the first Thor movie, because it's a little bit more, being that it's a first movie, I can hone in on it a little bit more, but Thor: The Dark World carries over some of the problems I have with the first movie, and that's mostly dealing with his secondary cast. I think that Thor's side cast is the weakest of the solo films. You know, Captain America's got a really good side cast, Iron Man's got a really good side cast. The side cast in Thor, I've never been a big fan of. Kat Dennings is annoying here and there. I'm not a big fan of, you know, the professor that they're always going to talk to. Natalie Portman I like okay, but that's among the weakest of the love interests of the MCU, in my opinion. Where Thor: The Dark World is enjoyable to me is, again, something I'm going to echo when I talk about Thor, is all the stuff on Asgard. I love everything with Anthony Hopkins and with Loki and with Rene Russo. I want to see a whole movie on that world, which is hopefully what we're going to be getting in Thor Ragnarok. I love that they have, you know, the real solid antagonistic relationship between Loki and Thor, especially following the events of the Avengers, that they really focus in on this, and the fact that they have to kind of work together for a while there. I loved all of that. The villain, again, another weak villain, the little dark elves, you know, Malekith, I think was the guy's name. I don't remember anything about his motivations. But it was an enjoyable movie. It's an enjoyable sequel. I love the opening, especially when he has that gigantic rock monster. He just blows him away in a second. Anyone else? But Thor: The Dark World, it's enjoyable, but just above Iron Man 2 for the bottom of the MCU movies. So number 12 is The Incredible Hulk. Now, the only reason that this movie is so low on this list is because I believe this is like the one MCU movie that the MCU just kind of left behind. You know, this came out the same year as Iron Man, when they were getting all this universe kind of rolling, and they really don't, it's almost like they don't accept this movie as a part of their canon. You know, they do, but they don't. They had Edward Norton play it, who I loved Edward Norton's portrayal of this character. I don't know if it was difficulties with the studios or what, but, you know, I'm a big fan of what Mark Ruffalo's doing, but I would have been just fine with Edward Norton staying on as Bruce Banner. I thought he did a great job. Liv Tyler, William Hurt, they were really great side characters. I loved the villain. God, the actor's name's escaping me right now, but the Abomination. The whole showdown at the end, it relished in the fact that it was a Hulk movie. It was monster versus monster, and I loved all of that. This is way better than that Hulk movie we got from Ang Lee. So this is really the only solo Hulk movie that I even acknowledge exists. That other one was, you know, a nightmare. But that's the only reason really why this is so low on the list, is because I don't feel like Marvel really accepts this movie. Maybe I'm alone in that, but just I don't feel like they ever go back to discuss this movie. They really don't try to. they don't try to expand on the story or the characters that were in this movie. You know, we got to see William Hurt return for Civil War, which was cool. But that's the only reason why this is so low. Number 11. This is a movie that I'm actually kind of surprised that I'm one of the few people that has my criticisms for it, and that's Doctor Strange. This movie just came out this weekend, and you know, I had pretty good expectations for this because I liked Guardians of the Galaxy so much, so I know what Marvel can do with properties that people don't know a whole lot about. They can really sell you on it, and they nail it. And to me, they didn't nail it this time. They had a lot of really great things going on in this movie with the special effects and, you know, the world turning alternate dimensions and all the different things that Doctor Strange was bringing as far as his world, bringing that to the MCU. I loved all of that, and I loved Benedict Cumberbatch as Doctor Strange. All the side characters to me were underdeveloped, especially the ones that you're going to really need to know for further movies, like Mordo. Again, another throwaway villain. I didn't care or know what the hell Mads Mikkelsen's motivations were, and then you got that weird looking CGI monster at the end, and just to me the formula got in the way of this movie. You know, when you've seen so many of Marvel's movies, that formula is starting to show now. It didn't show as much at first, but now it's really starting to show. When you watch Doctor Strange, it hits the same beats as Iron Man, it hits the same beats as Thor. And you walk in and you can tell exactly where this movie is going from the start, and that's what really held it back for me. I wanted to be surprised. I wanted to take me in directions I didn't expect it to go, and it just didn't go there for me. So I enjoy Doctor Strange a lot. It's a lot higher on the list mostly because of its special effects, because the special effects in this movie are mind-blowing. I'm going to be shocked if they have serious competition at the Oscars this year. They're that good. So Doctor Strange, enjoyable, not one of my favorites. That's number 11. Number 10 is Avengers Age of Ultron. Now, the biggest kind of thing that works against this movie, and it's not this movie's fault at all, is because the whole novelty of seeing all these characters together for the first time that really drove how magical that first The Avengers was, isn't here because we've already seen it. And that's unfortunate because, you know, this is a really good movie, and I feel like it gets shit on a little bit too much. A lot of people really, really criticize this movie. And some things are founded, and I feel like a lot of it is just nitpicking or just, you know, criticized way too harsh. You know, you can tell that there was a little bit of battling between Joss Whedon and the studios for what they wanted to do and what directions they wanted to take. You can tell that a few things were shoehorned in there to set up further movies, much like they did with Iron Man 2, like the whole Thor hot tub time machine scene. But the main negative with this movie to me was just that I didn't feel like Ultron really delivered as a villain. And again, like I said, this is a theme that's going to echo through most of these movies, is that the villain did not deliver. When that first trailer hit, and you heard James Spader's voice and that screwed up version of Ultron coming out to confront the Avengers, and you know, there's no strings on me. When you see that, you're like, dang, dude, this is going to be a sinister villain. They might have their hands full with this one. And he has some scenes that deliver that, but for the most part, he's very jokey. He's very much like an evil version of Tony Stark. You know, he's making quips and making jokes, and I love humor in the MCU movies, but sometimes they take it a little bit too far and it detracts from the movie. But other than that, the action scenes were phenomenal in this movie. I love the Hulkbuster scene. I was laughing my ass off. The opening scene to this was amazing. I actually liked the direction they went with the Hulk and Black Widow having a little bit of a romance there. I don't know. Hopefully they're going to actually expand on that in later movies, because otherwise it's a waste. But I liked that. I love the scene where they're trying to pick up Thor's hammer. The introduction of Scarlet Witch and Quicksilver. I love Scarlet Witch. Quicksilver not so much, and that's more of a product because of how great he was in the X-Men Days of Future Past movie. And I like Division. So there's a lot of things in this movie that I love. It's entertaining as hell for me. I can watch it over and over again. There's some flaws here and there, but to me, they're very minimalistic. So I really enjoy Avengers Age of Ultron. That's my number 10. Number 9 is the original Thor. Now, a lot of what I said for the Thor Dark World is going to carry over into this, and it's just that I really want to see the whole movie take place in Asgard, because all the stuff in Asgard I loved in this movie. Now, before I saw this movie, I had no interest in seeing Thor. I was like, this looks like a weird direction. You know, we hadn't quite gotten sold on the MCU universe yet. You know, the Marvel Studios brand wasn't quite as shiny as it is nowadays when it came out. So I actually didn't see Thor until like a year or so after it came out. And I only watched it so that I would know everything going into the Avengers. And I was surprised at how much I liked this movie, because it's just so... enjoyable being able to see Chris Hemsworth's early version of Thor, the cocky, arrogant prick that I'm not going to listen to anybody, I'm the Prince of Asgard, and him interacting with Loki, who in this movie was more the conservative son, if you can believe that, and interacting with Anthony Hopkins as Odin. I loved all that. My favorite scene in this movie by far is whenever Thor doesn't listen and he goes on to take on like the, what the hell do they call them? The ice demons. Correct me down below. I know I'm saying it wrong. But he goes to take on them, and then Odin comes out of nowhere and he's like, "Father, we'll take them down together." And he goes, "Silence!" I love that. So I love everything with Asgard in this movie. I enjoy the Earth part because that's the majority of this movie. I enjoy the Earth part, but I don't care much for the side characters in the Thor movies. Again, Natalie Portman is fine. I like her as an actress, and she's not a bad character, but it's among the weaker of the love interests. Kat Dennings is hit and miss with her scenes, and I'm not really a big fan of the Professor. He's very goofy here and there. So I like Thor a lot. I just wish if it was a whole movie on Asgard, it would probably be in my top 5. So I enjoy the hell out of Thor. That's my number 9. Number 8 is Captain America: The First Avenger. Now, as I'm getting higher on this list, guys, like I'm saying, like from Thor up, these are all movies that I really, really, really enjoy. So these are not movies that I dislike because they're not in my top 3. Like from here on, I love all these movies. Captain America: The First Avenger. What a great introduction to that character. Now, before this movie, I knew who Captain America was. I was aware of the character. I liked the concept of the character, but I wasn't really a Captain America fan. This movie changed all that because Captain America is the one Marvel hero so far who, from the beginning, is just morally solid. He's not somebody who had to have this huge character arc with his morals, where he was starting off as a cocky dickhead, and eventually he overcame that, and now he wants to do good, like Tony Stark, like Thor, like Doctor Strange, like AntMan. Captain America was good to the core from the beginning, and that's what I love so much about this character, and that's what really gravitates a lot of people towards Captain America, is because he's kind of like Rocky in that way. Just everything that he stands for, you really love and you really cheer on. The fact that they set this back in World War I was a great decision. How they interacted or incorporated the whole thing with him being frozen, and that's how it got him into the Avengers. It didn't feel forced or rushed at all. It felt totally organic. I loved the side characters in this movie, from Bucky Barnes all the way to Peggy Carter. That's one of the strongest of the love interests, if not the strongest to me, because I really cared about their relationship, and I was part heartbroken at the end when he knew, falling into that ice, that he was never going to see her again. And especially how they, I'll get into it more in the next couple of movies, but how they expand upon that in the next couple of Captain America movies. Just that, to me, is the strongest love interest in the MCU by far. The action scenes are really good. The only thing that this movie falters in a little bit, it is a little formulaic for a origin story, but it hadn't quite showed its formula quite yet, because this was still in the first phase, or maybe the second phase. But they had the villain of Red Skull. Again, a villain that is known by comic book fans to be one of the greatest comic book villains of all time, and he's a throwaway in this movie. He's got some really good scenes, but by the end of the movie, he's a throwaway. The only thing, I keep hearing people say, Red Skull is going to come back eventually, because all he did was kind of get dissipated in that Tesseract, and they went somewhere. He's going to come back in a movie later on, maybe the Infinity War. That tells you how much people love this character, and they want to see him done right, because he wasn't quite done right in that first movie. So that's the main thing that holds Captain America: The First Avenger back, is just kind of a weak villain. Number 7 is AntMan. Another movie that I had no expectations for when I first heard it announced, but the Marvel brand is what got me interested. That and the casting of Paul Rudd. I'm a big Paul Rudd fan. I think that guy is endlessly talented. He's hilarious. I thought he did a phenomenal job in Ant-Man. You don't think of Paul Rudd pre-Ant-Man as being a superhero, and damn did he deliver that. He's more of the comedic version of the superhero, but he's a superhero nonetheless. The side cast in this was great. Like Michael Douglas, you put Michael Douglas in anything and it's automatically better. You got Michael Pena, who is a great side character. The villain, I actually did not hate the villain as much as a lot of people did. I think he's one of the lesser throwaway villains of the Marvel Universe, but he's still kind of a throwaway by the end. So, I'm more on the conservative side of that. I liked Yellow Jacket, and I liked the actor Corey Stoll, and I believed his motivations. So this, to me, was one of the times where the villain actually worked for the most part. I loved how they made it like a heist movie that's set in the Marvel Cinematic Universe. This was kind of around that time after Winter Soldier where Marvel really honed in that skill of being able to make a superhero movie that's more of a genre film that just happens to star superheroes. I loved the whole interaction with Falcon and the post-credit scene that leads into Civil War. So they incorporated Ant-Man really well into this, Marvel Cinematic Universe. The special effects in this movie are crazy. Like whenever he's shrinking down, like whenever he's trying to in that tub and everything, or when he's trying to jump through the keyhole, or that whole battle on the train at the end. I love how they do it, where they, it's like this huge epic battle, and then it zooms out and it shows the train. It's like the humor in this movie was spot on. So Ant-Man, I enjoy the hell out of that. That's my number 7. Number 6, and a lot of people are going to be upset that this is this low, is the original Iron Man. I loved Iron Man when it first came out. I think it got overshadowed by The Dark Knight when it came out, because shortly after we had one of the greatest comic book movies ever made. But Iron Man really kicked off the MCU with a punch, because this is a character nobody knew about really before this movie. Robert Downey Jr. was a has-been actor coming back to play a superhero. This movie had everything going against it, every reason to fail, and it succeeded on almost every front. This movie, Robert Downey Jr., again, is one of the greatest actors ever. He's one of the greatest performances for a superhero ever. And Tony Stark is one of those endlessly likable characters. Even when he's being a dick, you just love him. And this was a great origin story. This is one of the best origin story movies that's ever been put onto film, because it shows a character go through this huge change. The action scenes were great. The villain was one of the first really throwaway Marvel villains, so people didn't really hone in on that really too much when they were talking about this movie. I actually like the villain of the Ironmonger, but again, it's one of those Marvel themes. It's not the strongest villain in the world. The side cast is great. The little bit that we see Jon Favreau, he's got some good interaction with him. I actually liked the roadie that we got in this movie. Again, I can't think of the guy's name at all, but I do like Don Cheadle's version a little bit better. So I didn't really, not a huge loss with that. Pepper Potts was a great love interest for Tony Stark. They really developed that love interest thing over the next couple of movies. It wasn't like they're just in love in the first movie. They really had to build that, so I liked how they did that. And just the whole concept of him just slowly upgrading his armor to get the one that you know and love and you always see now as Iron Man. So just Iron Man's a classic. There's not really a whole lot more I can say about it that hasn't been said numerous times over the past 8 or 9 years. But Iron Man is great. That's my number 6. Number 5, and here's where you guys are going to get your torches and pitchforks out. Iron Man 3. I know I'm in the minority, but I think Iron Man 3 is better than the original. Shoot me. I love Iron Man 3. I'm a huge Shane Black fan. I love this as an MCU movie and as a Shane Black movie. The whole twist with the Mandarin did not bother me because I don't have really that attachment to the character from the comics. I thought it was a clever little twist. I can understand completely, and will never argue with somebody who is pissed and that ruins the movie for them because they love the Mandarin. Because from what I understand, the Mandarin is like the Joker of the Iron Man world. So if we got a Joker that ended up being a tease or a joke like that, I'd probably be pissed too. So I get it. But it worked for me. I loved how he got stripped away from his armor, and this was a Tony Stark focused movie, not an Iron Man focused movie. I love all of his interaction with that kid. Jon Favreau really got a chance to shine in this movie, and he's one of my, one of the more underrated actors to me. I liked the villains in this. They weren't throwaways to me. The whole Extremis project was really cool. I actually liked Guy Pearce's villain a lot. He was a cool little mirror image of Tony Stark, and I actually like Rebecca Hall in this movie too. So this movie really, the only thing that really had it going against it to me was that it feels a little bit out of place in the MCU movies, because it's a very Shane Black heavy movie set in Christmas. It feels like a Shane Black movie set in the MCU, not an MCU movie that just happens to be directed by Shane Black. And that's not really a negative for me, because I love Shane Black, but just how it fits together in the whole cog machine of the MCU, I understand why the gears don't quite fit with the Iron Man 3. But I endlessly enjoyed this movie. I laugh my ass off every time I watch it. I love Iron Man 3. That's my number 5. Number 4 is Captain America Civil War. What a phenomenal movie. This came out and just kick-started our summer season with a damn kick to the groin. This movie kicked ass on almost every level. Captain America versus Iron Man was a great concept for a third movie for Captain America. It's a very Steve Rogers focused movie, even though it's basically the Avengers 2.5 if you just look at it on paper. And that's an achievement all on its own, is that they can shuffle all these characters but still have it be a focused story. I loved how it was really ambiguous whether or not you really wanted to side with Captain America or with Iron Man. It wasn't a clear-cut decision where like Iron Man is the obvious villain of this movie. You could watch this movie and go either way. I loved all the interaction between the Avengers with the one, especially once they start really opposing each other. We have these friends that are now turned enemies. I feel like the interaction to Black Panther was one of the greatest introductions of a Marvel character that we've seen in the MCU so far, and the introduction of Spider-Man could not have been done better. Any other director or movie or studio, that would have felt like a shoehorned in scene, and it would have felt so out of place, and it was one of the best parts of this movie. Where this movie fails slightly to me, this is one of the few villains, and again, I'm in the minority with this, that I actually like in the MCU. I liked how he was just kind of pulling the strings from behind the scenes. He wasn't a mustache-twirling villain or a superpowered villain or somebody trying to take over the world. He was pissed off because his family got killed, and he was trying to manipulate the Avengers to fight each other from behind the scenes. Did we need a villain in this movie? No. Was it executed perfectly? No. Was the scene at the end a little bit convenient that he could get Iron Man and Captain America and Bucky Barnes all in the same spot to have that big reveal at the end all together? Yes, very convenient. But it worked for me. I thought it was pulled off pretty well. And the only other weakness is that there's some spots in this movie that drag a little bit. And the stakes should have been a little bit higher. If you read the comic, there's death. There's crazy things going on with Civil War. Civil War, the movie, is toned down quite a bit from that. Nobody dies. I still feel like somebody should have died. It should have been Rhodey. But they give him magic space legs, so now he's alive. He's continuing on in the franchise. So Captain America Civil War, one of the greatest action and comic book movies ever. I love it. That's my number 4. Number 3 is the original Avengers. This movie, again, just like I said with Iron Man, it had every reason to fail. This was one of those movies that had the entire weight of the MCU on its shoulders. We had been building up to this for almost 4 years, since 2008 with the original Iron Man. When everybody walked into the Avengers, the number one thought in their head, I don't care who you were, was, man, this better not suck. Because if you build up something that long and put that much effort into it and that much time, you better deliver. And damn, did they deliver. Joss Whedon did phenomenal directing this. The humor in this movie is the best that you're ever going to see in the MCU. The interaction between all the characters could not have been done better. The action scenes are phenomenal. The way that they slowly build the getting together of the Avengers and the clashing of the egos and everything, and then they had the big fight at the end, was genius. I actually like the whole Chitauri thing, and I like how they keep referencing that in the Netflix series. The only negative in this movie, honestly, that I ever talk about is that Captain America's outfit looks ridiculous. It looks so good in Captain America the First Avenger, and thank God they went back to that look for Captain America the Winter Soldier, but it just looks so cartoonish and cheap in like a cosplay costume in this movie. That's the only thing that stands out to me as a negative, is that whenever I see it, I'm just like, God, that looks so bad. And that's also why they have him out of the helmet damn near the whole movie. But this movie is just, it's a cemented classic. For a lot of people, this is the greatest comic book movie of all time, and I cannot argue that. But the Avengers, nothing more I can say about it. I love this movie. It's phenomenal. This is the pinnacle of the whole MCU. I really hope that they can top it with the Infinity War movies, but they got a damn whole lot of work to do to even come close to topping the Avengers. That's my number 3. Number 2 is Guardians of the Galaxy. This is a movie that I knew absolutely nothing about when I went in to see it. I knew the actors playing it. I knew the basic idea of who the characters were. I knew nothing about the story, nothing about the villains, nothing about the setting, never read the comic, never heard of the comic. Never really had any introduction to Chris Pratt before as an actor. Never had any introduction to the wrestler who plays Drax. Damn, what's his name? Batista. I love the other 3 actors who are in it. So they were enough to get me into this, and the MCU brand got me into this. And damn, I did not expect to love this movie as much as I did. There is so many great things about Guardians of the Galaxy. The way that the actors interact with each other. You know, this is the movie that put Chris Pratt on the map, because even though his character is about 85% just him playing himself, it works so well in this movie as Star-Lord. The soundtrack to this movie is one of the greatest soundtracks to any movie ever. I downloaded the soundtrack to this movie, and I've had it in my iPod since this movie came out, and I constantly go back and listen to it. Just, you know, Come and Get Your Love, and all those old, just throwback classic R&B love songs fit so well into this movie, and they interacted, and they utilized those songs so well with the whole concept of his little awesome Volume 2 or Volume 1 mix. And just, I loved how there's little 80s throwback, little 80s things thrown in there, because I'm a big 80s nut. The villain was one of the less throwaway villains of, you know, Ronan the Accuser, I think was his name. He was a cool villain. At the end of the movie, he didn't really pose that much of a threat, because you always knew Thanos was in the background, but he interacted with them pretty well. The humor in this movie was just hilarious. I cannot stop laughing at this movie. No joke in this movie ever gets old to me. Just all the interaction between Rocket the Raccoon and Chris Pratt, and the whole thing about, you know, like, I need that guy's fake eye to, you know, have this whole plan, or I need his fake leg, and he's just giggling, like, that whole thing. Drax, if you throw a professional wrestler into a big budget blockbuster, 9 times out of 10, that's the worst character in the movie. And Drax was arguably one of the best characters in this movie. Just his whole concept of being so literal that he could not understand any bit of sarcasm was so hilarious. You know, he's like, oh, it went over your head. Oh, nothing goes over my head. I would catch it. The special effects in this movie are great. It fits so well into the MCU while having almost nothing to do with the MCU aside from Thanos. I really look forward to their interaction in the Infinity War whenever the Guardians finally meet some of the Avengers. Just nothing more I can say about Guardians of the Galaxy aside from that is damn near one of the funniest and best sci-fi adventures that you're ever going to find. That's my number 2, Guardians of the Galaxy. Love that movie. Well, if you can't tell by the process of elimination what my number 1 is, Captain America, The Winter Soldier. This movie knocked me on my ass with how fucking awesome it was. This movie, like, I loved Captain America, the first one. I was just still coming off the high from Avengers, but The Winter Soldier brought the MCU to a total other level. This movie was a espionage 70s action movie that happens to be set in the MCU. This is what kind of kicked off Marvel's whole concept of, you know, like I said before, having a genre film that just happens to star superheroes, and they have not done it better since The Winter Soldier. The way that they brought back Bucky Barnes. And, you know, if you walked into this and didn't know that Bucky Barnes was the Winter Soldier, that was probably a big shocking moment. I knew that it was him because I did a lot of research, and I was really starting to get into comic books after, you know, the Avengers. So I kind of knew that going in. But that's another element that a lot of people probably hail this movie as a great little twist there. The way that they have the whole, from the beginning action sequence of him taking on that ship all the way until the final one with the helicarriers, this movie has some of the best action sequences that have ever been put onto film. Not just superhero movies, action movies ever. The whole interaction with Nick Fury and Captain America was awesome. You know, Nick Fury has not been better than he was in this movie. The way that they team up Black Widow and Captain America without making it feel like a forced love interest, that you can actually have a platonic relationship between a man and a woman, and it works, and it doesn't feel forced, and it doesn't feel like there's this lingering attraction that they're going to, you know, shove down your throat by the end of the movie. They did that perfectly. The little throwbacks to Captain America 1 with the little computer with the small, the short German guy's voice in it, just everything about this movie. I feel like I'm rambling, but there's nothing about this movie that I don't love. The action scenes and everything, just the humor is really good in this movie. The thing that I love about this movie more than anything else is that elevator scene. I always go back to the elevator scene. Whenever he gets in, and this is one of the things that really cemented the Russo brothers as being such damn good directors, and you would have never thought they would come from TV and deliver a movie like this. That scene where he's in the elevator, and people just start coming into the elevator, and his wheels are turning, and he's like, something's not right here. And the elevator ends up being full with like 15 guys. And he just sits there, and he realizes what's about to happen. And he just goes, does anybody want to get out before we get started? And then it's like this little silent, oh shit, he knows. And then all of a sudden that first thing comes out, and it's one of the best action sequences ever. God, I want to go and watch that scene right now. But the Winter Soldier to me is so far above, even as much as I love Guardians of the Galaxy and the movies that are underneath it, the Winter Soldier is so far above those with how much I love that movie. Marvel is going to have a hard time ever topping that movie for me, because the Winter Soldier is just, if I had to give a top 10 favorite movies of all time, Winter Soldier would be somewhere on that list. I mean, it's that good. I love it. This is the movie that really cemented me as a Marvel Cinematic Universe fanatic. And, you know, a side note, this was the movie that really sold my dad as well. My dad was a kind of a naysayer, like, I like the Iron Man movies, and here and there I like these. He saw Winter Soldier, bought all the MCU movies, and now he goes and sees every single one like I do. So this is one of those movies that just totally turns people into MCU fanatics. I can't say anymore. You know, I'm not going to ramble any longer. The Winter Soldier's number one, by far, undisputed champion, Captain America the Winter Soldier. If you have never seen it, please, God, go and get that movie now and just drop whatever you're doing and go and watch it. Well, that's my ranking of the MCU movies, guys. It kind of makes me want to go and watch all 14 of them right now. Put your list down below, and like I said, go and check out Sean Chandler's video as well. He's given his ranking. Our videos will be up around the same time. His video link is going to be down in the bottom here. Check out some more of his videos as well. He does a lot of really good work, and tell him that I sent you over there, and give him a like and a subscribe. Please put your list down below, because I want to see what your guys' top 14 of the MCU movies are. Rank them however you feel they are. You can please argue with my list, because I love debating people. I'm sure I'm going to have a lot of debate with my choices, especially Iron Man 3 and Doctor Strange. Put all that in the comment section below. Let's talk about it. Please like and share this video and hit that subscribe button. That way you get to come back and see me next time. But if that's not soon enough to check out some more of my videos, you can check out a few more by clicking right over here.